Land records for family history can tell you so much. And it can also be really meaningful if you want to take a trip back to where your family lived, to actually see the land that they owned and where they resided. Land records can tell you relationships. They can tell you women's maiden names, which can be so difficult to find. They can tell you women's first names. That can be hard too sometimes. Often our women get lost. And they can tell you about the military service that your ancestor may have performed. Well, land records are a lot of different types of records. And sometimes I think people think that we're talking only deeds. And while deeds are great, they are not the only type of land record. So today, I'm going to go over the various types of land records, where you can find them, what they have in them that can be helpful to you. And also, I'm going to talk about how you can actually map them so that when you see this land record and you don't know, like, where is that, I can show you how you can find that. We're going to be talking about land grants and military warrants. We're going to be talking about headrights and land that was given to people just for showing up. We're going to be talking about different ways that you can find plat maps and how to map your people. I have a handout for this video because there's a lot here today, okay? You can get the handout by either being a member of Aimee's crew or you can purchase it on my Etsy page. The links are in the description below, and then I'll put them at the end of the video. If you are part of Aimee's crew, FYI, you also get a live stream every month. And just last week, I did a live stream with Aimee's crew where I worked on my own family tree and I worked on finding land records and doing everything that we're talking about today. It's an hour-long live stream and I will go through everything and you'll see it more in action. I'm going to be looking for my family records. I'm looking at where they actually lived, mapping them on a map of today. I'm going to be looking for land grants, deeds and grants. So anyway, you can watch all that in action in my live stream. When you are a member of Aimee's crew, you get to watch all of the past live streams and you get to get the handout of the month for free. So you'll get that handout for free. So if it interests you, check that out. All right, let's dive in. Why are land records so important? Well, a lot of things were destroyed, especially if you were researching in a burned county where the courthouse was destroyed either by war or just a fire or a flood or something like that. Land records were frequently recreated because they involved money and people needed to prove ownership. So land records are frequently a big record group when you're dealing in either times when we didn't have as many records or when we have less records surviving. Now let's start with deeds because I love deeds. Deeds oftentimes provide information about relationships in ways that a lot of people don't expect. And I've done a whole video on deeds, and I did that kind of in the beginning of doing my YouTube channel, so it might look a little bit different. But that video talked more about how to find deeds, what's important in them, and the indexing methods of deeds. The indexes, finding deeds and indexes can be really difficult. Because different places did their indexes in crazy ways. So like half to 2/3 of the video is just about looking in those indexes. So why am I a big fan of deeds? Obviously, I did that video in the very beginning. In this example, we have a deed where a man and his wife are selling property that she inherited. Jacob Fry and Elizabeth, his wife, late Elizabeth Rudabaugh. So now we know her maiden name. Later on in the deed talks about the fact that this is land that she inherited from her father and it names her father. How good is that? I mean, like, that's awesome, right? Such a great thing that you can find in a deed. Now with Family Search's full text search, this is so wonderful. And more record groups are being added to this, by the way, but they started with land and probate records in the United States. So you just can type in a word like Jacob Fry, and then you can go, and I would recommend narrowing it down by place. So I'm going to narrow this down to Virginia, and then I'm going to narrow it down even further to Westmoreland County, which is where I found Jacob before. Now I can apply that, and I can find a lot of deeds for different people by the name of Fry. So if you want to go to this full text searching, you start in Family Search and scroll down on the right-hand side and go to Family Search Labs, View Experiments, and then you want to look at full text and you can turn it on. If you haven't done it before, you'll be turning it on, or you can go to the experiment and then you'll be into that full text searching. So awesome. All right, but deeds are not it. All right, deeds are not the only way to go. So let's talk about some of the other ways that your ancestors could have acquired land. Between 1619 and 1705, the British government offered 50 acres of land to those who wanted to come and settle in the colonies. The Virginia Company granted the 50 acres to any individual that wanted to come, plus whoever they brought with them, whether it be family members or indentured servants. Now, indentured servants usually had to work for 7 years, and then they would be free, and then they would get their 50 acres of land. And so you might have family that came over in the early part of the United States, and that is how they obtained their land. You can find some of those records in the state archives, as well as on Find My Past. They have some great indexes of indentured servants and other passenger lists that note if somebody was a servant or not. So that's something that you want to research. Now, in the United States, at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, the United States offered those that were willing to serve in the military a land grant as well. Military bounty land grants can be found at Fold 3. Ancestry has some. FamilySearch has some. And then you can also check the National Archives. You could get 50 to 1,000 acres for military service, and those military land grants continued up until about 1856. So you might find something there. And not only that, in the land patent or the military grant whole paperwork, which you have to get from the National Archives, you could learn about the military service, about the family. If a widow was applying for the land, she had to provide all sorts of information about when she married and all of that information. As the United States government acquired land, either through treaty or purchase, they would frequently give it away for a really good price or even for free. And so those land patents can be found, a lot of them, at the Bureau of Land Management. Now that site is wonderful and it's got a lot of really terrific tools on it, but they don't have everything digitized. So if you don't find a land patent there, it may still exist. You may need to contact them to get it. What will you find on a land patent like that? You can actually get the image of the original patent, which has the name of the person obtaining the property, where they resided, and a description of the property and the date that the patent was filed. Now, keep in mind that sometimes these patents were filed later because they needed to prove ownership. So that doesn't necessarily, mean that they were only there. They may have been there much longer or much earlier than that date. Now, again, there may be more information in this patent file. All you're seeing on that website is the original patent image. Now, the patent file also needs to be requested at the National Archives. So that may be something else that you want to seek. In the handout, I'll give you some links on how you can order information from the National Archives and a lot more details on the different land grants and where they can be found and things like that. So check that handout out. Now, keep in mind, only 30 states were public land states. 20 states were not. And they will not be found on the Bureau of Land Management site because their lands were either issued prior, like Headright Grants, prior to the Revolutionary War, or because, like in the case of Texas, because they were independent for so long. So the states that were not included in public land grants included the 13 original colonies, which are Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island, as well as Hawaii, Kentucky, Maine, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, and West Virginia. So those you're going to have to find. If you're looking for land grants in those 20 states, you're going to need to find them probably in their state archives or historical societies. That's where you're going to see those types of records. Now, for the 30 that were public land states, I want to show you a little bit more about what you can find on the Bureau of Land Management site. It's pretty cool. All right, so here we are at the Bureau of Land Management in the General Land Office records. It's glorecords.blm.gov. And where I recommend that you start is search documents, and then you can search by location. So let's say I want to look in Oklahoma, and I want to look for Horan, one of my family names, and I'm going to search patents there. Now I've got two Michael Horans that obtained land in Oklahoma. They were both in Grady County. So I'm going to open this first one, and they were both obtained at about the same time, okay? Or they were filed, I should say, at the same time. So let's go to this first one. And when I click on that, I see the information, the name on the document number, miscellaneous information, the land office where he obtained or filed for the land. He obtained 160 acres, and it was a sale cash entry. The authority here is the law that allowed for him to obtain that land. So this isn't a military grant. This was where he purchased the land, okay? Now down here, I have the description again, and I have a map of the United States with nothing on it, and this can confuse some people. You can move it around like that by just going over it and clicking it. But if you click on this map right here, it's going to map where that is. This is using the township and range method that was begun in 1785. Prior to that, records were meets and bounds, and they're really kind of a pain to find. Sometimes you need to go to the county and ask for help in finding where that land actually was. If there's some land points there that are really easy to find, like a river or something, then sometimes that can be helpful. But meets and bounds just used rocks and trees and rivers, and then property lines of other people to kind of talk about like where this property existed. And as you can guess, it wasn't super reliable. If a rock got moved or a tree died, we had a problem. So they changed to this method of sections, township, ranges, okay? And so that's what is being used here. So the larger box is the township. We have the section right here, and then we have the part of the section, which was the southeast quarter of section 17. So this is section 17, southeast quarter of section 17. My handout has additional information of how to kind of figure that out with a great diagram in it for kind of seeing how that all works. But the really cool thing here is I can zoom out a little bit and I can see where this is in relationship to other places. It's southwest of Oklahoma City. Now I can take this information and I can move it to a current Google map, and I could even make it a my Google map, and I could block this out and save it. Now, when I did my live stream with my Aimee's crew, I did this and I showed you how you can do that on your own personal saved map with Google. Kind of cool. But there's more here on this website. Let's talk about this. So if I go here to the patent image, I can actually see the original patent. So here's the original patent, Michael Horn of Cato County, Oklahoma, the land office of El Reno. And then we have this description, the southeast quarter of section 17 in township 8 north of range 8 west of Indian Meridian in Oklahoma, containing 160 acres. And then we have down here that it was signed by Theodore Roosevelt. This really wasn't Theodore Roosevelt. He was the president at the time, but this would have been signed by the land office recorder, who was C.H. Brush. All right, you can tell by his signature that he signed everything. But he had authority by the president to offer this land and sell this land. Now, if I go back up here to related documents, this is where some of the juicy stuff is. One, with the surveys, I can see the other people that owned land around him. This guy owned the southwest quarter. This guy, Emory Anderson, owned the northeast quarter, just right north of Michael. And this guy owned the northwest quarter of that same section. If I go to surveys, I can actually see some of the original surveys, some plat maps and other things. All of these could be really wonderful. But I'm going to go to this first survey that was done in March of 1874. And if I click on plat image right here, it'll take a few minutes, but it will pull up the image of the plat that they made. And I can download it. Right down here, I can click PDF. And it's going to take it a while to generate the PDF, but then I can download it. So while that's generating, I'm going to go back up here so I can maneuver this way, and I can see these sections, and I can see what rivers were going through at the time, which they may not exist anymore. So I love these maps. And occasionally I'll print them, and then I'll make notes about everybody else that was residing around. It's a great place for me to track land records in a particular area. This is a public map. It can be used in your family history books. So right down here, you can see the PDF was generated, and I just click here and I can download it. Pretty cool, huh? So when you find your ancestors' land records, make sure that you ask appropriate questions. Like if they're selling land, well, where did they get it? Did they get it by land grant? Did you find where they purchased the land, if they purchased it from an individual? Did they inherit it? Is that how that land came into their hands? That provides all kinds of really important genealogical clues. There's so many things that land records can tell us and have us think about. And I've given you even more of those in the handout as well. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Do you understand now how land records can be so valuable and the different types of land records that you might find for your ancestor? Don't just think you found them all if you checked deeds or if you checked land grants or something like that. There's going to be more, and you need to find them all because they're going to make all the difference. Now, here is my video about the deeds, and then below I have my live stream that I did with Aimee's crew. You have to be a member of Aimee's crew to watch that video. You can go to my channel and you can just sign up. Make sure you sign up for Aimee's crew, not supporting the channel. And then right up at the top is the link to my Etsy page if you want to just pick up the handout on your own. I hope you have a great day. Find your family and your land records. Take care.